So in this video, I will be discussing why I don't use a light meter whenever I am shooting with off-camera flash. So hi everyone, this is Jiggie, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So before anything else, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel and would want to learn more about off-camera flash photography or maybe just photography in general, then this channel is for you. So you might want to consider subscribing, and while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you want to see some of the images that I've created, you could always follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. So this video was really brought about by you guys, because every time I upload a new video or a lighting tutorial video, there will always be a comment in the comment section asking why I am not using a light meter while I am shooting. And personally, I really don't want to address it anymore because it's to each his own. There's some people who love using light meters, and I personally don't find the need to use light meters anymore. But since the questions were actually very frequent, I decided to create this video. Now, with that being said, all these things or all these reasons that I'm giving you is basically something that's tailor fit to the way I shoot. So it works for me, but it might not work for other people. So with that out of the way, let's talk about 5 reasons on why I don't think that the light meter is necessary whenever you're shooting with off-camera flash. So reason number 1 is that it slows me down. I am a portrait and wedding photographer, and when I am shooting weddings, it is not really advisable to use a light meter because of how fast the pace is whenever we're shooting. So if I'm shooting the bride and I have my light, can you just imagine how much time it will take for me to go there, meter the light, go back, set my exposure, then shoot, or the light may have changed, so I'll have to go and meter again, or the distance of the light may change. So it's not really such an efficient way of shooting. It's easier for me to just take a shot, assess if it's overexposed or underexposed, then adjust accordingly, then shoot. Now, whenever I'm shooting weddings also, I shoot outdoor. So when I'm shooting outdoor, I am on aperture priority most of the time. Like 90% of the time, actually, I am on aperture priority. Now, if you want to know why I'm shooting an aperture priority or why I prefer shooting an aperture priority, I'll leave a link in the description below because I already made a long video about why I shoot in aperture priority 90% of the time. Now, back to what we were talking about. Since I am shooting an aperture priority outdoor, the light or exposure might change, and for me to have to adjust again and meter and do all the necessary steps to get a proper exposure for a perfect exposure actually, but might not be perfect anymore in the next minute, it's again just not really very efficient. It's easier for me to just take a shot, look at it, assess if I'm overexposed, and then adjust accordingly. So it is all about speed and efficiency. Well, that's for the first reason. The second reason, I shoot in high-speed sync also, and I use ND filters. So my light meter cannot give me or determine the proper exposure if I am on high-speed sync. There are light meters actually that can do that, but they're very, very expensive. And for that one niche thing that it needs to do, I don't think it's really worth the investment. So whenever you're shooting with high-speed sync, your ordinary light meter will not be able to give you your proper exposure. Now, if I'm not shooting in high-speed sync, then if I want to shoot wide open, I have my ND filters. Now, whenever you're using ND filters, the meter reading that the light meter will give you is not what you're supposed to be setting in the camera, because remember, ND filters are cutting light. So I may get to have an exposure of f22 in my light meter, but since I'm using, let's say, an 8-stop ND filter, I have to adjust accordingly again. So that's one more thing that you have to think about. And I just don't use any ND filters or ordinary ND filters. I use Vari ND filters or Vari ND filters so that I can adjust accordingly to how I want my ambient light to be. So sometimes I'm in between 6 stops and 9 stops. I may be in like 7 stops. So and there's no indicator there for me to know exactly what f-stop I am, or how many stops my very ND filter is cutting. So again, it's easier for me to just basically take that shot, assess, and then adjust accordingly. Now, the third reason is that we are in the digital age. I've talked about it so many times already now that all you have to do is look at the back of your viewfinder or the back of your camera where your LCD is at, and you could already see if you have the proper exposure or not. Light meters, of course, when you were using film, or if you're using film, is very essential, especially those that don't really have the internal meters, so that you can get the proper exposure, because you don't know if you do have the proper exposure until you get the film developed. But now at the age of digital, it's very easy for us to actually see it. Now, you also have to consider, though, that part of this is knowing your gear, because your LCD or your viewfinder can change depending on the situation in which you're in. If you're in bright sunlight, sometimes it's very hard to determine the proper exposure from your screen, or at the same time, your screen might not give you the proper exposure because they are not calibrated screens. However, if you do know your screen, or if you do know your equipment, therefore you will know how your screen reacts. Like for example, with my camera, I already know whether or not it's underexposed or overexposed just by looking at the screen. Even if the screen is telling me that it looks like it's properly exposed, it may be underexposed. So again, it depends on you knowing your particular gear and understanding how it really works. Okay. Now, the fourth reason is that sometimes the light meter, or definitely the light meter, will not be able to understand the vision that you want to create. So there are times that you want to be very creative, that the light meter will give you the proper exposure, but that's not what you're looking for. There are times that you want to light up a subject and yet still have it underexposed, or you light a subject and have it overexposed. Creatively, we have the freedom to do whatever it is that we want, and it's important that we are able to create that. So the light meter will not understand whatever it is that we want to do. So it's better to just take that shot, look at it. Is this what you wanted to create? If that's what you wanted to create, then fantastic. Now, the last reason is that this actually ties up everything. If I make a mistake when it comes to my exposure because of the speed that I want to be shooting in, I shoot in RAW. So it's not going to be a problem. In other words, I can easily adjust my exposure in RAW without losing any of my details of my highlights and my shadows, because I will never be one stop overexposed because I can see it. The most I will be would be half a stop or 1/3 stop over or under. So those are the little mistakes that might happen. And honestly, whenever you're shooting in RAW anyway, you are supposed to edit your photos. In JPEG, you've got DRO, which is the dynamic range optimizer, which just basically adjusts everything to give you the proper exposure. So it really does. When I give my JPEGs, even if I'm slightly underexposed, it's automatically just gonna bring it back. But my RAW files, I will need to adjust it anyway. I will need to work on it, because that is what a RAW file does. A RAW file is still not an image. You still need to process it with your software before it can become a readable image. So those are basically just the reasons on why I personally like not shooting with a light meter, and I feel that the light meter already is an archaic device, that it's not really something that I would recommend for photographers to invest in. Now, to recap, here are my 5 reasons on why I stopped using a light meter for flash photography. Number 1, it slows me down. Number 2, it's not really applicable to high-speed sync or ND filters. Number 3, we're at the age of digital. We can see it immediately. Number 4, creatively, it might not be in sync with what you want to do. And number 5, I shoot in RAW. Now, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And I hope you did enjoy this video. And if you did, please do consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Now, if you want to see some of the images with the techniques that I referred to today, feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. Okay, till the next video.